Hi, welcome back to ICE. In this lecture, we're going to look at an introduction to requirements analysis for a website. And this is regarding what we need to know or would like to know about users when building websites. Rather dated book, you might think, but there are ageless principles in that book about user interface design, and we're going to look into uh, a lot of those principles in this lecture. So what we want to do is to try and understand the user, or we want to ask this question: what is it about the user that we would like to know when we design the website? So we want to understand how users interact with computers, understand some human characteristics that affect usability. We want to at least be aware of the user's level of knowledge and experience, as well as the user's task and job. We will also look at some psychological and physical characteristics to consider, uh, as well as look at some methods we can use to gain understanding of users. So when users interact with computers, there are a number of issues which may cause problems, right? So, for instance, if jargon is used, if the design is non-obvious, uh, when certain distinctions are too fine, so that it's hard for the users to differentiate between, for example, uh, different buttons, right? So one button says go, another button says proceed, and there are different buttons, and it can be confusing to the user. Right? What's the difference between go and proceed, for instance? There could be disparity in problem-solving strategies. So in order to buy a book, you might click on some other link called exit, for instance. Right? So the link with the label exit is not really intuitive, right, for the task of buying a book. There could be design inconsistencies, right? So the button to cancel, for instance, in one screen is in the top right hand corner, another screen is in the bottom left hand corner, for instance. And users may react to bad UI design in all those ways as listed there: confusion, boredom. They may just abandon what they are doing. You may need to provide compensatory activity, just in case users make mistakes, and so on. Right? There might be a misuse of the system. Maybe some users will abandon the flow of tasks and proceed to direct programming, right? So they stop using your user interface and then proceed to, especially if they're technical savvy, you use a command line interface, for instance. So one of the important aspect of UI design is to consider perception. Perception is the awareness and understanding of the environment through different senses like sight, sound, smell, and so on. And there are various perceptual characteristics that need to be taken into account in UI design. And you'll find that when you look at different types of software and successful web sites, you'll find these designs, like these characteristics considered. So one of them is similarity, right? If a number of different objects share a common visual property, right, so they look the same, for instance, you would think that they are somehow related. Perhaps they belong together. For example, links of a certain color be somehow related, and you get links in a different color, they could be related, right? So imagine on a web page where you have 10 links, 5 of them are blue, 5 of them are black. Perhaps the blue ones belong to the same category. and the rest belong to another category. Right? So it's quite natural for the user to group things which look similar. Another perceptual characteristic will be matching patterns. Right? There might be certain patterns or certain layouts which are common, right, and could mean the same thing. The aspect is succinctness, right? So you want your website to be simple and things to be easy to remember, features to be easy to remember. You want your website to be balanced, right? And we look at examples of what balance means. So if you look at the top screen there, right, which has 6 objects and is a picture of balance. And when we look at the lower screen, right, it's a picture of imbalance or instability. And when you stare at the lower screen for long enough, you can sense instability, right? So certainly the top screen is nicer to look at, right? And you'll find that in many website designs, right, rectangular shapes are quite common. Another idea of good screen design is symmetry, right? And you can see if you compare again the upper and lower screens, the symmetric design is more pleasant to look at. Another interesting feature is regularity. Right? So again, if you look at the top picture, the picture of regularity compared to the picture of irregularity at the bottom, certainly the top picture is more pleasant to look at. And if you like, more comprehensible. The bottom picture looks like a picture of chaos. Another is predictability. We often assume that a menu bar or title bar will be at the top, right? And this is what users expect. Right? Users don't expect the title bar or menu bar to be at the bottom, for instance. And if you have a next button, for instance, is typically on the right hand side or at the bottom. It wouldn't be in the top left hand corner, for instance. If you consider a website with a logo, normally the logo is at the top left hand corner, right? It's not at the bottom, for instance. So predictability helps the user navigate your website, your web page. Another is sequentiality. In contrast to randomness. Right? So in the top picture, when you have sequentiality, indicates to the user how to process the form, right? To fill in the form, for instance, sequentially, as opposed to that picture of randomness below. And imagine you have a form with all the fields arranged in a random fashion. The user may not even know where to start, which field to start filling in first. Other perceptual characteristics include economy. So use fewer styles and colors, and you don't want to have a website with so many different fonts, so many different colors. And you want to convey the impression of unity. So you don't want a website or homepage, for instance, with too much white space. Right? You want less white space between elements. Proportion, right? You want to use pleasing proportions and shapes, as you have seen, symmetry, balance. We want to have simplicity, you want to reduce cluster, you want to have organization. And when we design elements of the user interface of the same color or same shape or visually quite similar, we want to suggest to the user groupings or that they belong to the same category. We can also use proximity to do so. So a number of objects that belong to the same category might be positioned next to each other in a layout. So let's look at a form here. So this is an accounts form with a number of different attributes. And you look at a slightly improved version. Right? So where there's sequentiality, number, name, street, city, and alignment, and certainly more pleasant than the previous one. Here's a slight improvement. You notice that in the field for number, there are 3 different parts, and often credit cards are positioned that way. Right? They are grouped together into several groups of digits. and this reflects that. You can also see that city, state, zip, for example, they are now grouped together. And telephone number may be multi-part, right? If the country code, area code, and the number itself, right? And you can see that the buttons OK, apply, cancel are right at the bottom. Here's an example of a real form from Qantas. Of course, they may have changed their website by now, but you can see that it starts off with personal details, starts asking you for personal details, which is what we expect, right? And then followed by the mailing address and so on. And there's sequentiality, right? For instance, you do normally fill in the address line 1 and 2 first before you fill in the postal code and the country, right? Instead of filling in the country first and then the postal code and then the street name. Right? So there's sequentiality